Time, everyone. According to our next guest, based on a recent study, about 25% of American workers are at risk for going postal.
Stress in the workplace has always been an issue, but due to the struggling economy, workers are more vulnerable than ever.
Please welcome USC professor and workplace culture expert Dave Logan. How are you doing, sir?
Great. Pleasure to be here.
Well, let's talk about this because we all get nervous at work. We all get frustrated with employers and fellow employees, but
Co-workers.
Co-workers. But things are worse right now, and 25%, that's amazing. Who's really at risk?
Well, so if we think of this 25% of workers who are at risk, they tend to exhibit, sorry to use a slightly crass word, they exhibit the view that my life sucks. So if you think of the people who screen your luggage, which is going to happen to me in a few minutes, or the people who renew your driver's license, you know, people move slow, there's no innovation, there's no collaboration. When people get in that culture, get very disgruntled, they move down to what we call stage 1. That's 2% of employees, but that's workplace violence. That's homicides, that's threats, that's violence of all kinds.
How do you recognize this in somebody that you work with?
Well, and that's part of what's new here. We just did this big study published in a book called Tribal Leadership, 10-year study, 24,000 people. And what we began to notice is that people who, if you will, go postal, the first thing that they do is they systematically take themselves out of communication with everyone in their lives. They just sever all of those, if you will, tribal ties with friends, with family. And this becomes a problem for people in companies because they kind of blend into the wallpaper. You know, they come in, they do their job, they're often late, they don't do such great work, but you just ignore them.
Right.
And then there's an incident, like the person in Kentucky who shot up the plastics plant. It was an issue over goggles and using a cell phone, and then he came back armed.
Wow. Are there certain industries that are more prone than others?
Yes. Any industry that has people that interact directly with the public. So you think of people who trade money, and right now we do need to be worried about anyone in financial services. There's so much anger and resentment about the subprime mess and people losing their houses. They need to be on the lookout too.
How do we remedy this? How do we begin to change things?
Well, the quick solutions are companies, first of all, need to have a zero tolerance for violence or threats of violence of any kind. That's number one. Number two is we need to train everybody to look for the signs of people who are becoming social isolates or cutting all of these social ties. But here's the real answer, is we need to, as a country, stop putting up with mediocre cultures. You know, these cultures where people feel like nothing I do matters, my life sucks because I work here. These are the breeding grounds for people going postal. We need to change those, and if we do, we'll make more profitable companies. Everyone is happier.
So it's a management issue?
It's a management issue. It really should go to boards of directors. Boards of directors often try to make sure they have policies in place so if violence happens, they're protected from liability. That's important, but what's much more important is let's build great cultures, and then violence simply doesn't happen.
Dave, I'm curious, how does this type of violence, adult worker violence, vary from, say, the disgruntled student who comes back and shoots up the school?
Well, so violence in adults is a little different than violence in kids. As kids, we've got raging hormones, and you've got all that going on. Adults hopefully have a few more protective layers. But the biology is exactly the same. What causes a fist fight when you're in 7th grade is exactly the same thing that causes somebody to go postal. It's a part of the brain called the amygdala that takes over, and the person loses the ability to think. They're simply acting out.
I would think during the Great Depression there would have been a lot of these feelings. Is it different from that now? Is it very different how we deal with turmoil?
Yeah, and there are a lot of those feelings right now. There was a lot of workplace violence in the Great Depression, and a lot of it wasn't reported, but there was a lot. There were roughly between 500 and 600 people in this country every year are victims of homicide at work. So this is something that often doesn't make the news because it's a single incident. But these things happen a lot. 12% of employees report on surveys being the victim of some kind of violence at work. This is a national epidemic.
How do our fine workers at the U.S. Postal Service feel about going postal?
I know that they don't like that term.
No, they don't like
no
that term.
Disrespect.
None whatsoever.
No disrespect at all.
None.
Okay.
Workplace culture expert Dave Logan, thank you so much.
We know you have a plane to catch, so we'll let you go, but thanks for being here.
Lots of pleasure.
All right, after the break, garage sale pointers and what to buy with all that cash you're going to make. You'll be inspired.